So welcome back. It is week 3 of the Every Bit Counts Challenge. As I'm sure you know by now, this challenge was started by the lovely Jessica over at Three Rivers Homestead. She did it as a personal challenge to herself for several years and then started inviting all of us to join in. And I'm so grateful that she did because I get so much done during the month of August because of this challenge, and I know you do as well. So this week I was able to check several things off my list, which is always a good feeling. And then I added a couple things that I didn't have on my list, and I checked them off. So that was an extra good feeling to get them on and off so quickly. Welcome to Grow and Preserve. I'm Carter, and I'm so glad you're here today. Let's jump right into this week's preservation activities.
We're going to kick off this week with an item that is on the top of my list. In fact, it's on the top of my list every single summer. So I'm going to get this underway. We're going to do a tomato salsa. So I have done a couple of fruit-based sauces so far this year, but I haven't done one that's tomato-based. But I have loads of tomatoes right now, loads of peppers, and of course plenty of onions still. So let's just kind of knock this out. This is a recipe called Zesty Salsa that is in the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving, page 207. This is my favorite tomato-based salsa in this book. I'm going to do it slightly differently than the way it is written. I will do it exactly the way it's written maybe next week or the week after that. But for this one today, I don't have, 3 or 4 hours to commit to all of the chopping involved in doing it the way it's written. So I'm going to do my speedy version. I have a full video on this. I'll link it up above. It's called Roasted Salsa. So instead of dropping these tomatoes in hot boiling water and then shocking them in an ice bath and then peeling and then chopping everything into little dices and dicing all those peppers and dicing all those onions, I'm going to throw the whole load in the oven. So these tomatoes are going to be in the oven. I think I had them on 425 for maybe 15 minutes. Not too long. I don't really want to cook them. I just want to, break them down a little bit. And I want to soften up the skins. I'm not going to remove the skins. And I know some people don't like that. I don't even notice it in the salsa at all. Now, I'm going to stick them in the Vitamix, although I'm not going to, blend them to kingdom come. But anyway, so I'm going to do that. So the recipe says, and I should tell you, I am doing 1.5 times the recipe because I have a load of tomatoes. So I'm going to do 1.5 times, but I'm going to give you the recipe as a single recipe. So it calls for 10 cups of chopped, cored, and peeled tomatoes. So as I told you, I am not going to core or peel or even chop my tomatoes, but everything else I did. So the next thing it calls for is 5 cups of chopped seeded green bell peppers and 2.5 cups of chopped seeded chili peppers. I don't really follow those directions either. I take the total, which is 7.5 cups of peppers, and I just split it pretty evenly between sweet peppers, not just green, but sweet peppers of any color, any variety, and hot peppers. And I leave most of the seeds in the hot peppers, and that gets us to the right heat level for us. So you can feel free to adjust. You're not going to mess with pH, between peppers to any significant degree at all. And then it also calls for 5 cups of chopped onions. That's one of the reasons I love to do this as a roasted recipe, because I just chop the onions in big hunks and throw them on the pan, and I don't have to do all the little dicing. So yes, while even this little bit of chopping, does bring tears to my eyes, it is not nearly as bad as standing there trying to dice all those onions. So that makes it so easy. So now that I have the peppers and the onions in the oven, I'm going to take these tomatoes, throw them into the Vitamix, and just give them, just a couple little pulses. Really, I don't want to mutilate them. I don't want to turn them into tomato juice. I just want to break them up just a little bit so I don't have, a half a tomato floating around in there. So that was it. 2 or 3 quick little pulses. Then I'm going to bring out the peppers and the onions, and I'm going to do the same thing to them. I want them to stay chunky. I want to be able to see all the chunks in there. I'm going to add a little bit of the tomato juice just to get some liquid in there. And then I think on the next one, I'm going to add a little bit of apple cider vinegar just to help it get going. All right, back to the directions. This recipe calls for 1¼ cups of cider vinegar, 3 cloves of garlic, finely chopped, 2 tablespoons of finely chopped cilantro, 1 tablespoon of salt, and then it says 1 teaspoon of hot pepper sauce. I don't bother with that since I increased the hot peppers. So I got everything stirred up in the pot, took it back to the stove, brought it up to temperature. Somehow I did not film putting it into the jars, but here it is coming out of my canner. I had 19 half pints. I had to bring out the big water bath canner to handle this entire load in one batch. So start to finish on this recipe, I'm probably an hour and a half, maybe an hour and 40 minutes. Whereas if I were doing the recipe as written, I'm looking more at, 3 to 4 hours, depending how spunky I am in my chopping. All right, on to peppers. You knew there were going to be some banana peppers in this one. I am trying to give you a slightly different vantage point so you're not just watching me chop. But anyway, the peppers, I try to get 24 to 30 jars is what I would like to have on my pantry shelf going into winter. But unfortunately, the peppers don't all come in at the same time, so I can't do all those jars at the same time. They come in, weekly, so I'm doing a batch of jars weekly. So these I am calling hot banana peppers because they are primarily banana peppers, but I do have a good number of hot peppers in here as well. And as you know, I'm going to add some sliced onions to this. I have my brine heating up. With my pickled peppers, I like to do a brine of 3 parts vinegar to 1 part water. Sometimes I add mustard seeds, sometimes I add pickling spice, sometimes I add a little allulose. I don't think I added anything again this time. I'm going to put some garlic in the bottom of each jar, and I particularly like these jars for this. As I buy new jars, I'm buying these clear jars. They have one little ball logo on there, but they don't have all the other design stuff. And as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather be looking at the food than the design on the jar. So I'm really liking these. So I'm going to stuff these as full as I can get them. And then I'm going to fill them with brine. And I'm going to debubble as always. And I'm going to top them off to make sure I have the proper headspace. And then I'm going to put these, I end up with 7 pint jars. So these are going to fit just fine in the steam canner. So I'm going to steam can them for 15 minutes, and then they will sit with the lid on the steam canner for an additional 5 minutes. If you're water bathing, they go for 15 minutes, you turn off the heat, and then take off the lid. So these are really quick and really easy, and I think really pretty, and it's super simple, super quick to get 7 more jars on my shelf. So you'll be glad to know I'm getting close to at least my minimum of what I want to get on there. So here they are, coming out of the canner, ready to go. As you know, there always ends up with some liquid down on the bottom, and these will settle down, and they'll look like the full jars they are soon. All right, this next one is going to be a real good one. This is from the Hands on Home. It's a cookbook that I introduced you to last week. We did the fermented pico de gallo out of this book. So I wanted to do something with all these Roma tomatoes I have. So I found this recipe. It's called oven roasted herb confit tomatoes. And then someone told me that basically this recipe using cherry tomatoes was floating around social media and that it was all the rage these days. So, I use my cherry tomatoes in different ways, so I decided to use the paste tomatoes anyway. And this turned out really well. So I took a full tray of the paste tomatoes, cut them in half. I took out the guts of the tomato. It doesn't say to do that, but I did it anyway. And then they want you to, they say 5 pounds of thick-fleshed Roma or other canning type tomatoes, 10 large cloves of garlic peeled and diced, a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil, kosher salt, freshly ground black pepper, and fresh or dried herbs such as thyme, oregano, basil, or bay leaf. So I used plenty of garlic because I really like that. And I used oregano, thyme, and basil in addition to the salt and pepper. And then you put these in the oven at 250, and the directions say anywhere from 3 hours to 7 hours. And truthfully, they would have been good any of that. But I let mine go for 7 hours, Next time I might take them out at 6 because I thought the herbs got a little bit darker than I would have liked. But you're going to see how these taste in a minute. So in the oven they go. Now I've got a couple of extra tomatoes that didn't fit on the thing and they had a few bumps and bruises. So I just really cut out all of the ugly bits of that, and I'm just going to dry some of these, and I'll throw them in a jar with the dried cherry tomatoes. Okay, out of the oven, here we go. Yes, you can see it says Ohio State Buckeyes. I am not a Buckeye. David is a Buckeye, and he thinks that I needed a Buckeye shirt for some reason. But anyway, so I am taking these out. It is late at night. They've been in 7 hours. So I put half of them in a jar that are going to go in the refrigerator. I'm going to put the others on a smaller pan that I can stick in the freezer. And I'm going to let them flash freeze. And then in the morning, we will give them a try.
All right, last night you saw me pull the roasted tomatoes out of the oven. But it was late. I was ready for bed, had just brushed my teeth, had no interest in tasting one of these things. So today we're going to taste one. This is the jar from the refrigerator. I put some in the freezer to flash freeze, and I'm going to package those up today, but we're going to taste it. Oh my gosh. Those are delicious. Those would be so good on a pizza or a cracker with some goat cheese or focaccia. Oh my God, or on a fork. Those are fantastic. All right, next time you have just a small batch of tomatoes, try that. I've got some that I'm gonna package up for the freezer, as I mentioned. So I'll try them again in a couple of weeks and see if the consistency holds up. But those are tremendous. Now I can see why the author says that hers never make it into the freezer. Man, those are good. All right, see you in a bit.
So after years of fighting with 2 different food savers that were more frustrating than they were worth, I just bought myself this new, sleek, little, tiny one that was less expensive, and this is my first time using it, so we're going to see how this works out for me. I want to put these tomatoes in vacuum sealed bags for the freezer, and then we will try them in a couple of weeks and see how it goes. All right, let's see what we get. Look at that. Oh my gosh, it just sucked out the air just like it's supposed to. I'll try it so you can see it now. Look at that. Oh, so far so good. All right, that's 2 I've done. No verdict yet, but so far so good on this one. All right, here comes another big project. I've just come from the garden and downstairs, collected some things that were ready to be harvested, picked up some onions from the crawl space downstairs. And we are going to do something I should have done years ago. I should be doing this all the time. Most mornings, I make us eggs for breakfast. And I am not a morning person. I try. I am not a morning person. I used to have a job where I had to be at work very early, and I still wasn't a morning person. So it's pretty much a miracle that I can handle, a frying pan and fire first thing in the morning. So every morning I think, gosh, it would be great if I just had some peppers and onions sliced so I could throw them into my eggs. Now, mind you, I do keep peppers and onions diced separately in just big bags of peppers, big bags of onions out in the freezer. But my morning brain is just not there to go grab some, get them zipped back up, get them back into the freezer. So I decided, shockingly enough, while I was still in my morning coma, that what I needed was some little bags. I could just pull out a bag and throw it in there frozen when I threw in, the sausage or ham or whatever it is that was going to go with our eggs. So here I am finally doing something that could have been very useful to me all these years. And I'm going to get some peppers and onions into the freezer. I'm going to flash freeze them so that they'll be a little bit separate. I'm doing about half sweet peppers, half hot peppers, and then I'll do a bunch of little onions in this and throw them in the freezer for a couple of hours, and then we're going to bring out my fun little machine again. All right, so everything is just about ready for the freezer. And then magically, it's out of the freezer. So we're going to put these into the bags. I'm looking forward to really seeing how this goes because I'm going to have several bags on this one. With my old machine, I would get one done and then I'd have to wait like, I don't know, 2 minutes before it would agree to do a second one. I could try it multiple times. It seemed to make it even more angry with me and would make me wait even longer. This one actually makes it through 11 bags, never stops, never needs a break. It just sucks all the air out and seals very quickly, much quicker actually than my Food Saver ever did. So again, I'm pretty happy with this. I'm going to use it as much as I can the next couple of weeks, and then I'll tell you a little more about it if I really like it. I'm not into recommending things that I don't find really terrific, and I just have not used this enough yet to know. It wasn't one of these sponsored gift things. I just bought this myself. So we will see if I like it or not. But so far, I mean, look at this. I haven't had a single issue. It does not stop. It's just sitting here waiting for me now. I can't go as fast as it does. So how about that? 11 bags to make my mornings. I'm all over that, so I'm thrilled. Okay, now it's time for a little snack. This is the fermented pico that we made last week. This is often what my snack, sometimes this is what my lunch looks like. This, and then, of course, David leaves the tiny little bits of chips. And that's my snack, which is just terrific. Next up is a recipe that I'm trying for the first time, and it's a very different recipe, so I'm not quite ready to share it yet, but I am trying to come up with a sugar-free cowboy candy that is as good as the original. As you may or may not remember, my husband does not eat sugar, so I would love for him to be able to have some cowboy candy on his hamburger or whatever without all the sugar. So I'm going to give this a try, and we'll see if I can come up with something that works out well enough to share with you. So I'm going to can it up today, and then I'm going to probably give it at least 10 days before I try it, and I'll definitely come back and let you know. And if it's a recipe worth sharing, I will absolutely share it. So I have the brine on the stove. I'm going to chop up these jalapenos. I tell you what, I have had so many jalapenos coming out of my garden this year, which is exactly the way I planned it. But as you know, a garden never ever goes the way you plan it. So I'm still kind of shocked that I have all of these jalapenos. I had 10 plants, and I am just swimming in jalapenos, which is great. But I would like to have some new product of jalapenos to put on the shelf, and I'm really hoping it is going to be this sugar-free cowboy candy. But we shall see how that goes. So I'm going to finish chopping these up. I was watching that 1870s Homestead the other day, and I don't know whether it was a recent video or an older video that I pulled out of the archives, but Rachel was saying that she finds that they really use the cowboy candy that has the diced up jalapenos instead of the rings. And honestly, I probably think that is the way things would go with us as well. But because I have the diced up hot pepper relish, I think I want something that kind of looks and feels different. So I'm going to go with the rings, and we're going to see how it is. Now, I tasted this brine before I put the jalapenos in there, and I thought it was delicious. The level of sweetness was right for me. We don't like it just overly sweet, so it was great. Then I put the jalapenos in. Then I tasted it again, and just like that, it got hot. So I think David's going to be really happy with this. So I just brought this up to temperature, and then I'm going to put it in some half-pint jars. These are hot, as you can tell, straight out of the steam canner. So I started out, I thought I was going to get 5 half-pints, and then I didn't like how loosely packed the jalapenos were in those jars, so I condensed down to 4.5 half-pints. So I'm going to get those topped off, and then I'll get the rims wiped and get them debubbled, lids on, and then into the steam canner. And I think that these were a 15-minute processing time, which with the steam canner, you leave them in for another 5 minutes with the lid still on. If you were water bathing, it would be 15 minutes, take the lid off, and then you can remove them. So in they're going to go. In no time at all, they'll be out. Here we go. Sorry, that picture's a little bit dark, but there they are. I got a little bit of floating going on, but that'll settle down. So 5 jars. I hope that's going to be great. All right, now on to the sriracha sauce. So if you recall, we started the ferment on this last week, and I'm doing kind of a 2-part thing. So I fermented it to start, and then I'm going to can it. So when I did the ferment, I didn't add the vinegar, and I didn't add allulose because I didn't know how the allulose was going to work with the ferment. So now that it has finished its ferment, I'm adding the vinegar and the allulose, and then I'm going to heat it up. So all the good stuff from the fermentation we're going to lose in this, but I knew that going in, and I'm okay with that going in. I want it to sit on my shelf and to be able to stay there for as long as I need it to stay there. So I'm fine with that. Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to run it through a fine mesh sieve. It's not, it's not super fine, so there was some chunks that got through. But I tell you what, this sauce did better than probably any hot sauce I've ever done. I always have some separation with the liquid on the bottom and whatever solids get through on the top. This one, as you'll see, there's no separation, not when they come out of the steam canner. It's been, 3 or 4 days since I did this now, and there's still no separation. And you'll see that in the final shot. It's just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful sauce. So I end up getting 2 of these 12-ounce jars. I'm really pleased. Great idea for this. I had hoped for another half-pint, but I didn't quite get there, and I wanted the headspace to be right. So what I decided to do was just put that in the refrigerator. Now, I did test the pH because this is not a recipe I've used before. I wanted to make sure that everything was fine. And of course it is. The pH on this was 3.5 on my little strip. So technically speaking, I could have just left it out as it is now, that little refrigerator thing. It could have sat, in the pantry with my regular sriracha. But I am a refrigerator kind of girl, so I stuck it in the fridge. So a few minutes later, these are coming out. I will link, this is a combination of a couple of recipes from Becky at Acre Homestead, so I'll link her video on it down below. And then no weekly video is complete this month without some dried cherry tomatoes. So here we go, I'm starting to fill up my second jar.
Let's do a final wrap up. I have almost finished my second quart of cherry tomatoes. I know you guys will be so glad when I'm done with this, for heaven's sakes. Peppers as well. I put 7 more pints on the shelf of hot banana peppers. I'm having to label these a little differently each time because I'm doing a batch a week and I want to keep them separate for this purpose. So I'm calling these hot banana peppers this time. Then I did an experimental recipe for some sugar-free cowboy candy. We have not tried this yet. I'm going to let it sit for another several days. It's been almost a week since I've made it. So we'll see. I'd really like to get to 2 weeks, but I'm going to try to get it in next week's video. So it won't quite be 2 weeks. But I'm going to try that, and if I like it, if it's good enough, I will do a video on it and show you how I did it. Then roasted salsa. My goodness. I put 19 half pints of roasted salsa back on my shelf, and I am thrilled to death. This is one of our favorite go-tos. David can have a snack in the afternoon. He just grabs a jar and a bag of chips, and next thing I know, the jar and the chips are gone. So that's a fantastic thing for my pantry. Then I got some sriracha on the shelf. Sriracha is my favorite hot sauce. I don't really use Tabasco or I don't know, whatever the others are, but I use sriracha and I really enjoy it. So I got this on the shelf. I did 2 of these 12-ounce jars, and then I had almost an 8-ounce jar that I just put in the fridge. We've already started working on that, and it's terrific. But I wanted you to see that these have not separated at all. It's been several days since I made this now, and there's no separation in that jar. Often you get separation when you don't do a really fine mesh sieve. Mine was pretty fine, but it's still thick. It's a thick sauce. Anyway, I'm very happy with the way that turned out. So I'll probably do some more of that in a bit. And then I have 11 packages of my sliced peppers and onions. I can't wait to use these in my breakfast, so I'm really excited about that. I think I'm going to do some more of those as soon as I have some more bell peppers coming in, some more sweet peppers coming in. I'm going to do that. And then these are my roasted tomatoes. These were so good. I had 2 packages for the freezer. I had 1 jar for the refrigerator. I can't show you that one because I ate it. It was really, really tasty, and I ate it with a fork. The whole thing I ate with a fork. So I'm going to open one of these this week, and if I like the way they thaw out and they're still as good as they were from the refrigerator, I'm going to make some more of these, because these are wonderful little flavor bombs. All right, so that was my week. I hope you had a wonderful week. I hope you did a lot of preserving, and I hope you're excited about the upcoming week. I know I am. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.